Hola, buenas noches. Good evening. My name is Abelardo de la Peña Jr. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes. Welcome to En Casa con La Plaza's Dan Guerrero Happy Hour on a very chilly February evening. Hope everybody's doing well. Survived the rain. No leaks on the roof. No rain in the gutters. But here we are. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of you who have come to La Plaza over the last couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. We are going to get started with giving you a little bit of update what's going on at La Plaza. As you know, we're open Wednesday through Sunday, 12 to 5 every day. But starting next week, we start our public programs. As you know, La Plaza has public programs at least, about 80 a year, and most of them are free. And we're going to start off next week with this. I'm going to show you right now as soon as I get to that page. Oh my God, I thought I knew how to do this, but I guess not. Here goes. All right, we're going to have here on campus, actually at La Plaza Cocina. Unfortunately, we're having some maintenance problem with our elevator. So we're shifting everything that we usually do on the 4th floor over to La Plaza Cocina, which is our teaching kitchen and event space right across the street on Spring Street. So next, on February 17th, we have Indigenous Languages and Resistance. It's a performance. It's a plática, a panel discussion featuring Aurora, Pedro, and Una Isu, followed by a performance by that Mixteco trilingual rapper, Una Isu. Aurora Pedro works with Cielo. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation. So please join us. Okay, I'm going to stop the share now. And I'm going to introduce our host of the Dan Guerrero Happy Hour, Mr. Dan Guerrero. Please zoom in, Dan.
Look how quick I did that. I decided to anticipate it this time instead of scrambling. Hello, everyone. Thanks for zooming in or Facebooking in or whatever it is you do. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's a little chilly. That's why I got my little cachucha on here to keep my balding head warm.
It's freezing. I mean, this is California.
Yeah. Well, we had this monster rains over this past weekend, and hopefully they're tailing off for a little while. I think next week is going to be beautiful sunny skies.
I missed them all because I was in Vallarta that entire time. And so all I kept thinking of, I did close all my windows, right? That's the only thing I was concerned about. And I had, so I was okay.
Good
yeah,
to hear.
it was serious. People got into some serious problems there with that.
All right, Dan. Well, I'm going to save you the trouble of telling me to skedaddle. So I'm going to skedaddle, and we'll see you in a little while.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Well, I'm very excited about my guest, as I always am. Otherwise, I wouldn't have them on, right? But they're all interesting, wonderful people, and I'm very privileged that most of them are longtime friends. Tonight's guest is an acclaimed and award-winning actress, but like for real. Lots of TV series. She's performed at all the major theaters in the country, from the Public in New York to the Taper and Pasadena Playhouse in LA and everywhere in between. But the funny thing is, I don't know if it's funny, but the off thing is, I don't know if it's off, is that acting came very late in her life. I don't mean that she's an old lady. As you'll see, she's a young, beautiful woman. But and if she listed all her talents, which are considerable, and we'll hear about them, she does not even put acting in first position. Her bio doesn't even start with an acting credit. So something is a little off here, and I want to get to the bottom of it. So zoom in, Sabina Zuniga Varela.
I love that intro.
I bet you've never been introduced quite like that.
No, it is so much fun. I love it.
Thank you for being here. I toast you. I appreciate your being here.
I toast to you with my magical disappearing.
That's hilarious.
Beverage.
You're like the Chicana Houdini. But I'm serious. It's so interesting. Your I guess we teased it, so maybe we should start with that. But I'm going to read you the first paragraph in her bio that I absolutely love. I even called a friend. I said, "You got to listen to this." She goes, "I'm going to zoom in. She sounds cool." Here is her bio. The first paragraph. Born and raised in New Mexico, daughter of a civil rights activist and a Vietnam vet, raised on red and green chili, elk meat, jazz, and Cat Stevens. Now, I don't even know where to begin. With your mom or with elk meat? I mean, that grabbed me. First of all, who doesn't love New Mexico? And
I tell
people
you.
from New Mexico, it's like Chicanos in Southern California. We're our own breed. And the Latinos of Mexican descent and in New Mexico, that's a whole other kind of chispa going on for it.
That's a great.
It's kind of complicated there between Hispanic, which is a
Mhm.
word we never use here, but it's very big in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is that beautiful conflict is captured in the flag of New Mexico. You know, the flag, the symbol, the Zia, which was taken from the Zia Pueblo. We have 19 pueblos across the state of New Mexico, is in red, and the flag is in gold. So the red and gold represents the Spaniards, and the design represents the indigenous, which was New Mexico is, I mean, there's a lot of blood on that land from the history of, you know, colonization and intermixing. And there is, you know, one of our biggest cities, Española.
That's right.
You know, even within New Mexico, there's different values and ideas of what it means to be, pick a word, Latino, Chicano, Hispano,
Right.
between North and South. Even the language, there's different words for very specific things. It's so fascinating.
All within that small state, really.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I'll tell you, when I first realized all that, you're very familiar, of course, because you've worked there many times with the National Hispanic Cultural Center there in
Yes.
Albuquerque, which is a beautiful, beautiful museum and performing arts center. But I don't know if you ever met a man named, or you were maybe related to Frank Zuniga. Did you ever know?
I do remember meeting Frank, and I can't recall at what event it was, but I actually believe it was at the NHCC, or I believe it was in New Mexico.
For sure.
I have that feeling of that presence. I think we found out we weren't related, but it's very rare for me to meet a Zuniga.
Yeah, it's not the most common name in the world. And
So it was just,
don't get me started on Sabina. We'll get to that in a minute.
oh yeah,
But
okay, that's
the
fun too.
National Hispanic Cultural Center had the Performing Arts Center is the Roy E. Disney Performing
Yes.
Arts Center. That's because of Frank Zuniga.
Oh, he hooked up with Roy and Edna to help get the funding for that?
Frank worked for years at Disney as cinematographer, director,
That's right.
producer,
Yes.
and he's the one that introduced the center to Roy, who fell so in love with it, hence the Roy E. Disney Performing Arts Center.
Okay, that makes sense. So it must have been at an event, because yes, the NHCC I would definitely credit as my home, the kind of the root of my theatrical journey was the NHCC. Like they just, the amount of support and work that they gave to me and my theater companies when I was an up and coming director, and just they're my everything. So that must have been it. It must have been something there.
Absolutely. They are an incredible center. But what made me bring it up is not so incredible. Also because of Frank, I think he's the one that suggested to them that they wanted a huge, major blow up gala to open the Roy E. Disney. And Roy and his wife were there. And Roy and Frank suggested I produce it, which I did. And I'm very big on our indigenous roots. I always have been, as most of us are in Southern California. And I wanted to start with an indigenous dance that would bless the land and the center. And because the concept was that I was going to have one night with everything that they would be seeing over the next 100 years of the center. So we had the Santa Fe Symphony, and we had dance, and we had flamenco. We had everything. And I wanted to open with an indigenous dance, and they didn't let me. They said, we're more in touch with our Hispanic roots.
Ooh, even the name of the center has always given me grief.
That's right. Now that's, that was in I don't even know when
Yeah.
it was. It was a long time ago, but I'm saying that's not
Early 2000s,
who they are today or who made the decision. Those people are I'm sure aren't there, but I was so stunned by that.
Hmm.
And that's when I first
Yeah.
started the idea that it was very complicated.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of us that live in New Mexico. We know those conversations of no estoy de española, no tengo sangre de los indígenas, nada. Like
That's right.
it's this, it's
That's
the pure blood, it's the brown on brown, the crabs in a bucket. That it's a very combustible, but I think it almost goes along with the land.
yeah, yeah.
It's so ancient, it's so volcanic, it's so, filled with so many things that you can't help but escape that conflict.
Yeah, but it's special there. There's something special. You can smell it. You can
Oh,
smell. I love Albuquerque. I'm not such a fan of Santa Fe, but I do love Albuquerque. I love
yeah,
Albuquerque.
yeah.
I have a quote I found online. I always like to scare my guests with a quote because they're always damn. Because nowadays I've literally had people say, in 1994, you spoke and you said, I said, 94, you're not even that person anymore, right? But I think this is recent. And here's what you said. You said the idea of social justice and activism came up in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And you said social justice and activism is in my DNA. And then you go on to say that you never would have even gotten into theater if it was not for that activism. Now, my guess is it came from your parents.
Absolutely. I remember when I got old enough and curious enough to ask my folks, how did you get together? Like, what was that about? And the story that I love is so my father is from southern New Mexico, Carlsbad, and his family had a farm. We still have a farm down in Malaga, which is right near the border in
Mhm.
southern New Mexico. But the really good fishing is up north. And my mother in the late 60s had moved after she worked in the South for SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She went up north to northern New Mexico to work with Reyes Tijereno Lopez and other organizations that she started. And they were both fishing at the same lake. And he walked by and asked her, "Do you need a minnow?" He had a bucket of minnows.
Now, that's a pickup line I've never heard before.
Right? So she said, "Well, is it a," she said, oh, he said, and she said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you want a union minnow or a non-union minnow?" So she was just kind of, I think, joking around, and she's listening now, and so is my dad. So I hope I got this story right. But I believe she said a non-union minnow, which I imagine is like a challenge. And so he handed her a dead minnow. And my dad's union plumber, local 412, Albuquerque. But when it really comes down to it, I did one of those StoryCorps interviews with my father, and I asked him the same question: why did you and mom get along? Why did you get together? And he just said that they had similar values as well as the same perspective of the Chicano movement and
Mhm.
their understanding of what was necessary for our people to gain recognition, to gain equality, all of the stuff people are doing with EDI, all of that stuff before land acknowledgements, before EDI, they were on that page and that struggle. He being a Marine and having served 2 tours in Vietnam, my mother serving her own combat work in the South. They had both been through these wars, fighting for something that felt endless and in which both of them were a minority, being Latinos in these big movements. So I just grew up with that ideal of you give to others. My grandparents were the same way. It's just about that's our purpose here.
You have to. Linda Ross had said something to me recently. He dropped a name. Sorry about that, but
I love it.
because it was so, and she threw it out, and I just was so moved by it because she wrote a second book, and as you know,
Mm.
she's not been able to sing for a good many years now. So she wrote a second book, and I said, I can't believe you're writing another book. And she said, well, I have to find other ways to contribute, which I thought was deep. You know, it's what you're just saying. You can't just take up
It's a
room on
sense of
the planet.
service. Yeah.
You can't just take up room on the planet. You have to be there to help and to contribute and to hopefully make things better. Not
Yes.
everybody feels that way, but that's the truth. But you mentioned the Chicano movement, but the Chicano movement was pretty much here in Southern California. They didn't have that in New Mexico.
They did. They did. And it was
Really?
a lot of what was happening in New Mexico at that time was based around the land. So this is the land grants movement, which was in the late 60s. That's
Oh,
where Reyes Tijerina Lopez
right, right.
and, Dolores Huertas from New Mexico,
Yes, of course.
right?
Of
So it's
course.
in her blood as well from that same pool. And
She
that,
also started as a teacher, and we'll get to
yeah.
that in a minute.
Oh, so much. Yeah. My mother's a teacher. I'm a teacher. My dad's one of the best coaches you'll ever golf, basketball, fishing, anything. He can hunting, he can teach you anything. But yes, so the Chicano movement, it's I think you could link it to the land. It's a little different, right? We have the urban Chicano movement, and then you also have more rural, kind of like really fighting with who was here first. We had the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that really impacted our area and our clash between indigenous and Latino, Hispano, Chicano, Um, so yes, it was different, but it was still ever present and connected.
And got into your DNA for sure. Now
Absolutely.
you do, as I said in the opening, how you don't even list acting in the first paragraph, but you do consider yourself first and foremost an educator.
Yes.
And
Yes.
not that you don't educate as an actress, because we all do in our arts, all artists, whether they do it with a paintbrush or a pen or a performance or a dance, but
Hmm.
it's a different educator that you are.
Yes. Part of it was definitely, my mother taught at the University of New Mexico. My mother still works and teaches at different colleges all over. Growing up in the classrooms, having an obsession with office supplies. I mean, I just love in elementary, they would have discard week where the library would get rid of books to invite
Wow.
new books, and I would get the teachers manuals, the workbooks, and I would go home and I would play school, and I would have file folders for homework. And I just love this idea of I want to ask questions and then people answer and then we talk about it. And then after undergrad, I did a crazy liberal arts degree in undergrad. I took 5 years. I was working, uh, doing theater, doing this, anthropology, world religions, everything. I started subbing in the Albuquerque Public School District, and that flash forward led me. I taught middle school for 5 years, special education, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, and just loved it. I love that age. I know they're crazy, but it's something that not only I've always wanted to do, but something I know that I'm very good at. I understand listening, which I think is the number one thing in teaching as well as acting, and just disseminating information and living in questions, which excites me.
And special ed is particularly close to you, special education.
Very much so. I just feel that there is a lack of understanding that brains function in a different way, just like body types are different, languages are different. The students that, whether it's an emotional behavioral thing, whether it's a physical thing, in my training, in my first master's degree, which was in education, we did not call it deficiency. We called what the students had an exceptionality.
Mhm.
So they were exceptional in the fact that their brain worked this way. For example, I had a sixth grade student, Star McLeod. I will always remember her. At sixth grade, she could read and comprehend at a college level. But
Wow.
you put a math or a science project in front of her, and she would literally run off campus, and we'd have to go retrieve her. And that was her exceptionality. She was just amazing that way.
It's advanced so much in these days, and now you have so many autistic young people. and people on the
Hmm.
spectrum. I would think that whole area is more and more complex every day. We know more, and yet in
Yes.
some ways we know less.
Hmm. That happens, doesn't it? Where I'm loving, one of my favorite shows on Netflix is Love on the Spectrum.
Mhm.
Beautiful show. There's an Australian version and a US version, and I do love it's getting more attention. I think the hard part is, especially in this country, is the support. Our education system is already here for our
Yes.
regular students and then for our other students.
Yeah.
We just don't. And the teachers, the burnout rate, and COVID, oh, it's just, ugh. it's
And,
it's
and
a
and
it's a
you
huge
you
thing.
get into cities like Los Angeles and New York, and I don't even know how teachers can teach anymore. There's 50 kids in the class, and they're underpaid, and then they're spending their money to get school supplies. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's insane. We'll leave
Hmm.
special ed in a minute, but a friend of mine just was the lead producer on a Broadway musical called How to Dance in Ohio. Do you know about
Mm.
that show?
I don't know that one.
It's based, what you would find in Street Now, the show, it's based on a documentary. Uh,
Okay.
and a Latino guy, and I want to say where it was, I guess Ohio. That's why I called it that. And he had a group he worked with in group therapy with 8 autistic young people, like in their teens, how to
Hmm.
dance in Ohio. They want to do their own
Mm.
prom. And there was a Peabody winning or Pulitzer Prize winning documentary done with the same title on
Mm.
those people. And the Broadway musical is based on that. And all 7 leads are autistic.
Yes, I love that. I love hearing that.
And
Talk about
what
representation.
Ah, well, and how they dealt with that is we're saying that it's got to be tender and special. They had this, and in terms of the costumes, certain fabrics would make them nervous, so they had to use something else. And they had, and the schedule, rehearsal schedule. I mean, and they really, and the young people were fantastic. But it took an incredible, I think, Sammy Lopez is his name, and that the producers and all of them would take that much, they could have just, oh, we'll grab 7 autistic kids and put them out there, but it was really a completely unique experience. It really was. How to Dance in Ohio. You should at least see the
I love
documentary. I'm
that.
sure it's
Yeah, I
on.
definitely want to check that out.
Theater itself finally wormed its way into your life when you were an undergrad, right? Through
Yeah.
educational theater. Tell me about
Yes.
what happened.
So my first, I actually love the story that I was dating a wonderful person who asked me one time, "Can you help me with my homework?" And they were an actor, hardcore actor, theater major. And I was like, "What's your homework?" He said, "Read this scene with me." It was from Death of a Salesman. And so I was reading it with him. And he's like, "Okay, great, we'll do it again." I said, "So you just have to read scenes and like memorize it and then do it?" And I'm an avid reader. Like I read, I consume, I can read very fast, I can speed read. I love it. And that just sounded so enticing, this idea of just reading and lifting words off a page. So he encouraged me to check out his Acting 101 teacher. Her name was Beth Lavender. That was her stage name, also known as Beth Ritson. And I just fell in love. She was the most supportive. It was Acting 101. And then I found myself in acting for educators because I was still kind of searching, trying to figure out what I was majoring in this liberal arts thing. So I was like, well, I might as well take some education stuff because I think I'm going to be a teacher. Then I took directing. Then I took script analysis. Then I took playwriting. Then I took, and I just kept adding because I just loved hanging out in the basement. That's where the theater department was at
Of
UNM,
course.
in the basement. And just like the people were so cool and funky and doing their own things and doing like improv at the Blue Dragon Cafe or who knows what. And I just fell in love with understanding that as when I was young, growing up on the 45s of Disney, Bambi, and like I listened to stories growing up. I didn't watch television much. My mom let me watch Sesame Street, 321 Contact. maybe a soap opera every once in a while. But it was mainly listening to records of stories and just I realize I'm actually just putting it together now how invested I was in hearing somebody tell me a story. Joe Hayes is a wonderful, amazing New Mexico storyteller. I still have his cassette tapes, who would tell stories of like La Llorona
Mm.
or the day it snowed tortillas. And
Oh,
the way that he would talk, and he would just really lift his voice and really make a joke. And then this would happen. And they had these morality tales, all these things. And, fast forward to undergrad, I just fell in love with storytelling and all the different ways you could do it. I tried stage managing, I directed, began as a director, was producing, did a little bit of writing. Writing still scares me.
you even formed a couple of theater companies there, but
Yeah.
still not acting. Still not
Still
acting.
not much acting. No, I auditioned for a lot of things in undergrad, didn't get much. Got a few little like new works programs, productions here and there. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so young. I didn't know what to do with my hands, the usual things.
You were searching, you were finding your path.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it
by
was
the
just
way, padding yourself with great armor. I mean, to prep. I'm sure all of those things that you learned come into
every little
play
thing.
every day with you as an actress, I'm sure.
Yes, it's all part of the toolbox. It's
Yeah.
all, and I always encourage any student I come across, have you tried doing the opposite of what you usually do? Have you tried writing? Have you tried directing? Have you stage managed? Have you been on a crew backstage? Have you been a dresser? Um, so yes, after undergrad, I ran away to Mexico for a little bit to strengthen my tongue, my Spanish. Went to a language school in Oaxaca for a few months, and then directed. I believe it was the first production at the NHCC, but before the Roy E. Edna, the Disney, the
Uh-huh.
big theater was open, the little Wells Fargo auditorium was open.
Uh-huh.
And I directed Bernabe by Luis Valdez
Ah,
with local Albuquerque actors. And it was my first time getting a paycheck as a professional theater
that's a big
maker.
thing. That's a big
It was a
thing.
big thing. And then we started a theater company, Teatro Nuevo Mexico. Out of that, I joined Las Meganenas. And for a good run in the early 2000s, we were producing amazing Latino theater around New Mexico, as well as at our home hub at NHCC.
Wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know what was there. So they had a small theater before. The museum
Yeah,
was
it's a little, yeah, the museum was open. There's a little 99 seat theater that opened first. Then I believe their 300 seat film theater opened, and then the big one opened.
yeah.
And then eventually we moved into the big one, and we did zarzuelas, we did oh my God, we did a ton of shows there. It was a really good run. And Albuquerque, La Compañía, Benito Martinez's mom the theater has always had a history in New Mexico. Back from when the Spaniards were coming through, they were doing zarzuelas on the banks of the Rio Grande way
Yeah.
back in the day. So it's always had its ebbs and flows. So we had a really beautiful golden era in the early 2000s of producing Latino theater.
I met Margaret when she first moved here with her three kids.
Oh,
And
wow.
they were kids.
Yeah.
Patrice and Benito and
Mm-hmm.
another very pretty girl. In fact, what she said to me, we were at some event and she came up to me and introduced herself. And this is how she introduced me. She said, um, your father, what did she say? Your father fed my children growing up.
Mm,
And I had no idea and what she meant, but I was a little afraid. But it turned out she had run or worked at a record store, and people
mm,
would come and buy Dad's records. And she said that's how. And so I have and she was a beautiful soul. We lost her a few years ago, and
yeah.
Patrice, you
Yeah.
know. But Benito's still around doing great. But I have a very soft spot with it. I remember they had literally just moved from New Mexico, and I knew they were very, very into theater there, and all of them.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I remember, so the story that I love is that when Benito was first, or not first, but was proclaiming his love for really wanting to be an actor, she's like, great, go to London, go
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
trained, right? She really believed in the training. And my first television role was opposite Benito.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was co-written by Janine Salinas, who was a USC MFA grad. That's my alma mater where I got my MFA. So my first time being on set, my first time getting a role in television, it just felt so like there were these arms
Yes.
holding me, that I'm with my paisano opposite him. It's
Yeah.
written by Janine. It was a beautiful thing. And I get to see Benito here and there at different openings and stuff. And it just feels beautiful.
And he's a wonderful actor, and he's done so well. He's got a really
Yeah,
good career going. I haven't seen him in a long time. If you see him, tell him I said
I
hello.
will. I will.
Now you just left class because you did, as you say, graduate with an MFA from USC, and now you teach at the USC School of Dramatic Arts. You literally just left class, right?
I did. Yes, I just finished with my MFA first years. We're doing some crazy movement work. They're doing headstands and back bends and all kinds of weird stuff. Um, yeah, so after the theater companies were created in New Mexico, I was teaching middle school, I was bartending, I was part of the theater companies, all that.
You were a
I
nanny.
just, I,
You
well,
were a nanny.
I've always nannied. When I came to LA, it became a thing. Like I've raised a lot of babies here in LA. I love every single one of them. Um, I just, on a whim, was like, I don't know enough about acting. I think I want to get more training in it. And all the gods and goddesses put it together. I got into USC. And then after graduating, I went on the road for about 7 years in regional theater. And as I came back to LA, in kind of after COVID hit, I moved to New Mexico, but I came back to work with Culture Clash and Luis for some online digital projects for CTG. And then I got invited by the head of USC MFA program, David Warshofsky, to kind of bring back some of our essential foundational practices that kind of built our MFA program. And I'm going into my third year now.
Oh,
And I've also been able to teach BAs. And
oh,
I've done BA movement, and this year I have BA Acting 101, mainly for non-majors, which is awesome. I have physical engineers, poli-sci students, communications, and
really?
it's great. It's great. So yeah, it's really wonderful to be that kind of full circle back at SDA.
And you're doing the two things. You're still an educator and also a very busy actress. I don't know how you do the two, but obviously you do because here you are. So let's look a little bit. We're talking tip of the iceberg. A few of your acting. You mentioned the boys, Culture Clash. There's
Our
still boys.
boys.
There'll always be boys. We have
Yep.
a photo here, Culture Clash, Chavez Ravine, and LA Revival. That was in
Oh,
2015. That's Herbert.
yes.
He ends up playing, I assume, what's his name? Fernando.
Yeah, Fernando. Fernando.
I think that's the first time I saw you.
Oh, wow.
I
Yeah,
believe
okay.
that's the first time I saw you. And
Yeah,
then you
because
also,
I was on the road, so I didn't do a lot of stuff in LA. That was my
yeah,
first big LA piece.
that's the first time I saw you. And then you also did Bordertown. I saw you there at the Pasadena Playhouse with them as well.
Yes,
Yeah, there's
yes.
nobody like the Culture Class boys.
Oh man. Well, and Richard Montoya, his father is from Varelas. So I always call him paisano because he's got those New Mexico roots.
That's right.
So
A
yeah.
great poet, a very important man in our Chicano
Mm-hmm.
history here.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the classics, George Bernard Shaw's photo. We have a photo here of you with him. No, you,
Oh, he does look like him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you never can tell at Cal
Oh,
Shakespeare. Now
I
that's
love
amazing,
that.
because it seems that Chicanas and Latinas have to keep playing Chicanas and Latinas, but you scoot back and forth between the classics and, everyone,
Well,
right?
I've been very lucky that one, and it's interesting. Both the Culture Clash that you just showed and You Never Can Tell were both directed by Lisa Peterson.
Oh, she's great. Lisa.
Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's something that I am obsessed. I say it this way with pure love. I'm obsessed with dead white men. I love Ibsen, Shaw, Chekhov, Shakespeare. Like it's just a Beckett. I want to do all of them. And so being able to do that Shaw piece, You Never Can Tell, was just joyful because there was no like, oh, we're doing the Latino version of Shaw.
Right.
It was just similar to Uncle Vanya at Pasadena Playhouse.
That's right.
There was no need to say, oh, we're doing the BIPOC version. It was just like, no, this is just our family and our story.
That's right. And that's
I
just
love
like
those.
Latinos want to be seen on the screen. And we don't have to do an all Latino play or an all
Yes.
Latino series, just
Hmm.
just like we're in real life. Who happen to be Latinos.
Yeah.
God said that 1,000 times. And then we have a photos. This is 2019 Mojada, Off-Broadway at New York's Public Theater, and then Mojada,
Oh,
Medea in Los Angeles. This is a rehearsal shot. Was this LA or was this New York?
this is New York. So that's Cheyu in the dark blue and Luis. Those guys have been besties for so long.
That the gentleman back there in the pale blue,
Yes.
yeah, El Maestro, the
Yes. And Maestro.
Yes,
Yes.
Luis Alfaro. And not only is he revered and rightfully so for his massive talent, but you've known him and have a long history. You met him when you were like 16 years old.
Yes.
How can
Yes.
that
I.
be?
So in 1990, my mother was a recipient of the MacArthur Award
Like,
for her work.
yeah.
And every year, the MacArthur Foundation, it's about every 18 months or so, they would bring in the new class members to Chicago for a weekend where they would give seminars, present their work. And I believe, uh, this is our selective memory. I believe that early, Luis had done like a presentation, but then he won his MacArthur 95, 96, maybe.
Probably.
And then more and more, like Sandra Cisneros, Ruth Behar, Guillermo Gomez Peña, the list goes on. There became such a presence of Latinos garnering this amazing recognition that they created the Macaturos and
Yeah.
would have their own retreats in their respective hometowns and reach out to community and have conferences and I just, yeah, so I think I was 16 or 17 when I first saw Luis do a presentation when his class was recognized. And then my final play that I did in New Mexico before I left to move to LA was Electricidad,
Hmm.
a production at the NHCC directed by a Sidine. Um, and it was just phenomenal to finally, I've been in love with Greeks since forever. So I did Electricidad, and then I got to USC as a student, and I went to turn in a paper at the offices, and I'm turning in the paper, and I see his name. I had no idea he was teaching at USC.
Oh, wow.
So then, as a third year, he taught a class with my cohort as well as our playwriting cohort. So then he was my professor, and then after grad school, I got a Facebook message from him that asked if I would give him my information to audition for what was then called Bruja, which
Yeah.
was the first adaptation of his Medea work at the Magic Theater. And that started a 7-year journey with his Medea adaptation. And in between, in 2014, I got to do Jocasta in his Oedipus El Rey. So I got to finish his trilogy.
Wow, that's fantastic. And his
It's quite a,
Medeas are
yeah,
very different, right?
very different. Very different. The one in the Bruja was set in the Mission.
Was
It
that
was
your
much,
first equity gig? Wasn't that your first
yes, that's where I got my card.
See, there you go. You own that man. You own
I do. I do. My firstborn, that would make it more Greek, right?
that would be good. Tell me about the two Medeas because they're
I would
completely
say there's three. Well, there's four in his work, but I was a part of three. So the first was in the Mission, very close to the classic, lots of male energy. Then he went to Chicago and worked with all the rock stars in Chicago, adapted it, to an all-female crew to
Mhm.
really tell the stories of and it became more of an immigrant story. He wrapped in an actual story of a woman's border crossing. Then from Chicago, it went to the Getty in LA,
Yeah.
and then he transferred it to Boyle Heights. And that Boyle Heights specific production did the Getty, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and Portland Center Stage. So I did all three of those. Then we took it to the public, and he rewrote it to take place in Queens.
God.
Completely different, changed the ethnicities of the protagonist, of the neighbor. It was incredible, the amount of detail and location that he was able to infuse into it. Every single one of them had totally different objectives and intentions. It was a new play every time. And I would have family and friends say, "Oh, you're doing that again." It's like riding a bike. And I'm like, "Nah, it's like putting the airplane together as you're flying."
And it's harder because you're thinking of the last version and the character and
You got to clean out all those cobwebs and completely open yourself up and be like, "I've never done this before."
he's
But what a
he's
cool journey.
I must say, and how it's a privilege as an actor to have had that long. You're his muse.
Hmm. I mean, he has a collection of us. We call ourselves the Alfaritos.
I see. You're like
And
Capote. You're like Capote's swans, huh?
well, isn't that the new the one coming out, the new
Yeah,
TV
they're
show?
doing the series on that book, his swans.
Yeah.
How do you say
But I
swan
mean,
in
those are all
Spanish?
my siblings, my big brothers and sisters, Sila Mendoza and Cristina and Justin Hewitt, like all of those, everybody that had done those and been in those. It's just Romy Diaz, like,
As a matter of fact, you mentioned Zila. You did still life at the National Hispanic Cultural Center.
yes,
Was that Harry Clark's version of
yes, it was.
well,
Hmm.
I directed it out here with Zila Mendoza
That's right.
as
That's right.
Frida Kahlo,
Yeah.
With Beth Grant
Oh my gosh.
as Georgia O'Keeffe. I saw that, I thought it can't be the same.
Yeah. And we took it down to San Miguel de Allende. I think I was a little young to be playing her, but I think I could, I, just to get a little personal and vulnerable, I've had a lot of injuries. I've had a lot of shoulder and hip surgeries, and many of them lined up with Frida's injuries, which are
Oh,
very interesting to me. And
wow.
it's a piece that I would love to revisit again, but I got to do it in 2007 for her centenario.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's a play
Yeah.
about the friendship between Frida Kahlo and Georgia O'Keeffe, which is
Yeah.
expanded. They knew each other, and it's all
Yes.
done through letters.
Yes.
Yeah,
Monologues. And then they have that one beautiful scene together drinking pulque.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love Zila. I love her.
Oh, she's my everything.
She's the real deal. We have to
Yes.
wrap soon, but first we have
Hmm.
one more thing that you do. In doing all my research, all of a sudden I find you're a visual artist. Oh my God, you've got a whole store online with your work and your drawings. I thought this can't be the same one. Well, can't be two Sabina Zuniga Varela's in the book. And we have a
Yes.
couple of photos. I want you to tell us a little bit about it. This
Oh
first one
my
is
gosh.
this is called Moon Time. That's beautiful.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you sell them as prints and then as pillows and then as all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's a beautiful online site called Society 6. It's so supportive of artists. You basically just upload your designs and then they can put them bath mats, pillows, coffee mugs, phone cases. They can print them. Um, since I was very, very little, I've been an abstract artist. Behind my dad's recliner is my second place of the New Mexico State Fair
Oh,
print of a piece that I did called Celebration. I was mentored by the great Sam Taylor, who he passed away a while back, but he gave me and gifted my first box of pastels.
mm.
And my mother enrolled me in some drawing classes, which I will never forget. I'm not going to remember her name right now. I believe her first name is Barbara and her last name starts with a W. She would consistently tell me, when you think you're done with a painting, keep going. Don't stop. And I've applied that through so many different versions of where I find myself acting, directing, teaching. It's never done. We're continuously learning.
It's like writing, you know, I'll tweak it, I'll tweak it, I'll tighten. Oh, I can do this, I can do it. And you go, when is it done? It's done because it's opening tomorrow night. You know,
Yeah.
otherwise you
Yeah.
would tweak till the cows come home. And I talked to Visual. I said, how do you know when a painting is finished? How do you know when it's done? We have one other
Yeah.
image here, which is also beautiful. Look at that.
Oh, that's Pedernal. So that's a very, very beautiful mesa that if anybody's from New Mexico, north of Española is Abiquiu. So in the bottom part, the light green with the little designs, that's Abiquiu Lake. And behind it is Pedernal, which is this gorgeous mesa that you can see from many different points in northern New Mexico. And I grew up painting that mesa and I continue to paint it. And it holds a lot of stories and significance in my life.
Tell us about the website again. It's called what?
Society 6.
Society.
Society with the number 6.
Okay. I couldn't believe it. I said, no, she's also a visual artist. Incredible.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you so much. We could go on another hour, but Abelardo will yell at us. Abelardo,
There
hello.
he is.
Yeah,
Hello.
We got to go home too.
Yeah. Are you at work too? No, oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, I'm at home.
Oh.
So, isn't she, I told you, isn't she wonderful?
Incredible. No, beautiful artwork. Thank you so much. What is your website, by the way?
Well, funny story. My domain name got hacked.
Oh.
It got bought by somebody else. So I'm in the process of rebuilding. But if you type in my name, Sabina Zuniga Varela, you will find links to my USC professor page, fun shows I've been in. I'm all over the place there, but eventually I'm going to
Yes.
be making a new one.
I see. Yeah, you have to, but it's amazing that you're able to balance all those very, very well, they're different and they're the same actually, right?
Yes. Yeah,
And
they
you
have,
do
I think,
something.
the same root, but
Yes,
they are part of
yeah,
a whole garden.
that's right. When you're an artiste, you're an artiste.
Love it. Yes.
We should put that in a t-shirt. When you're an artiste, you're an artiste.
I want it. Yes, that's perfect.
Abelardo, I
No.
guess we're ready to go. Thank you.
Ready to go. Thank you so much, Sabina. I've learned so much about you. Thank you, Dan, for bringing it all out as you usually do. So thank you. Thank you out there who joined us tonight. If you didn't catch the entire session or you want to watch it, we'll be posting it on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA and also on our Facebook page at La Plaza LA. And Dan, what are you doing with all these videos?
I'm going to sell them at a swap meet in Tijuana. I mean, a boy's got to do what a boy's got to do, you know? But the truth is, Sabina, we've been doing these things for 3 years. So what it has been is a visual oral history of all these stories, all these people. So we're proud of what we've done. So we shall
Well,
see.
I'm very honored to be included, and I just thank you so much for this.
I hope to see you in person soon. I'm sure we'll run into each other somewhere. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Mwah.
for Zooming. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Abelardo.
Bye, Dan. Bye-bye. Sabina, nice meeting you again, and we'll see you soon. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining us at La Plaza, En Casa con La Plaza, Dan Guerrero's Happy Hour. He'll be back in a couple weeks, and it'll be a great guest, as he always has great guests. In the meantime, between here and then, you got to come to La Plaza. Our museum is open Wednesday through Sunday, 12 to 5, free admission, incredible exhibitions right now. The primary exhibition that you got to watch, you got to come and experience is 18th and Grand, the Olympic Auditorium. Tells the history, the 80-year history of the Olympic Auditorium, the home of boxing, lucha, wrestling, roller derby, and punk rock, and so much more. Ring gear, we have objects, photography, text, videos, a lot of incredible work. And a lot of it is from people out in the community who we reached out to and were generous enough to lend us their father's robes or their boxing gloves. Incredible. So, and we'll be in a couple of weeks February 25th, Gene Aguilera, one of the co-curators, the Latino boxing historian, will be here. He's releasing his new book on Latino boxing, and he'll be here at La Tienda at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, signing his books. He won't be giving them away. You got to buy them, but of course, we have plenty of them, as well as his other 3 books here at La Tienda, as well as the 18th and Grand Blu-ray, in which the exhibition is based on. We had a screening a couple of weeks ago at the Vidiot's Eagle Theater in Eagle Rock, with followed by Q&A with Steve Dubrow, the director and co-curator of the show, and Chich Marin. And you could catch that on YouTube, as you can catch this session of En Casa con la Plaza Dan Guerrero Happy Hour, and all, I've lost count. I think we're at about 130, 140 episodes. So hope to see you here at La Plaza soon, and stay warm, stay dry. Hasta la próxima. Muy buenas noches. Bye-bye.